From the iShin Broadcast Studio, it's the Under the Radar Podcast.
Hey there, it's Jason Stahl with another episode of Under the Radar. And back on as a guest, I have Josh McFarlin, who is the president of AirPro Diagnostics. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you, Jason. I'm sorry I don't have the same energy as you do, and I'm sorry my shirt's not as cool, but I'm just as glad to be here.
Oh, man, we're going to have to work on that. Maybe get you a matching shirt next time. All
right, maybe... that sounds good.
Yeah. So it's been a while, Josh, since we connected. And first off, what's new with you? What's new with AirPro Diagnostics?
So earlier this year, we announced a change for AirPro. We got a new partner. So kind of like many in the collision repair industry, we know private equity's been pretty busy, and so we found a new partner in a private equity firm, Rotunda Capital, and they've come along, and so now they're kind of our parent company, if you will. And so there's been no real change in the leadership structure and things like that. It's more change in kind of capacity and bandwidth and resources and horsepower, if you will. We've got more tools at our disposal than we've had historically, and we're pretty excited about that. It's also meant lots of meetings and lots of travel and kind of getting to know each other and all of that. But the future's bright from that perspective. I mean, it's a great way to kind of build on the momentum that we had and build right into the future. So we've been pretty excited going through that process and everything that entails, and continuing to remain focused on our customers, the collision repair and glass facilities, as we go through all of that.
Yeah, that's great. Talk to me a little bit more about that relationship, because I would imagine you have more financial clout behind you or more resources. With a partner like that. Talk a little bit more about what that's done to give your organization a shot in the arm.
It's a couple of things, right? AirPro was founded in 2016, so we were just at the 8.5 year mark, kind of when this transaction took place, and so obviously it was still privately held at that point in time, and what it means for the owners of the organization is that they got to take some chips off the table, right? And so they got to get some recognition and reward for all of their hard work and risk associated with building something from the ground up. So there's that piece of it. But it also means that now we've got this other organization that, while they haven't previously been in the automotive space, they're viewing us as their platform. And in PE speak, right, in private equity speak, platform just means you're like the foundation that they now want to build onto. They want to help you grow, right? So generally speaking, when you get a PE kind of deal, you're either the platform or you're a bolt-on to a platform. And so for us, it's exciting to be the platform. It's exciting to be the core that they want to build onto, and they want to help us find adjacent verticals and complementary technologies and things like that we can go acquire or integrate with or use in order to build on our existing momentum. There's also something to be said for the things that you did to get where you are aren't always the things that you need to do to get to where you want to be, right? And so they come in, they've got a fresh perspective. They've got maybe different business points of view and different experience sets and different capabilities about the scaling and growth of an organization. We've done a lot of growth, but they've done more. And so they can come in and help us work through new strategies and business processes and report cards and all those kinds of things that I think, if you want to be glass half empty, it sounds like a lot of busy work, but from a glass half full perspective, it's ways to better run our business and more effectively run our business and fuel it for growth. And that's pretty exciting. And some of those are things that I'd done in my previous, in a previous life. So it's good to get to kind of dust some of that off and knock the rust off a little bit and get back to fueling some of that growth with more. Structure is the word that comes to mind, but that almost sounds like it has a negative connotation, and I don't mean it that way. I mean structure for all the right reasons, and how we make decisions and things like that. And I think that's pretty positive. It's exciting. It definitely also means that we've got some additional financial resources at our disposal to go do all of that. That's you got to spend money to make money, right? So if we're going to go acquire complementary organizations, well, that takes resources, it takes capital, and that's one of the things that they're bringing to the table to help us accomplish that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So private equity, normally we hear from you, we're hearing about a new product or a recognition for the technology you've developed. So speaking of new products, though, is there anything in the pipeline you're working on that you can, maybe you can't talk about it, maybe you can give us a few details or something, but any new products out there? I know you had a release, and I'm going to call it the wrong name, I know, Augie 2.0 or something.
Yeah.
Anything like that?
Augie 2.0, I think we did talk about that the last time we were together. I don't even know if we had a name for it yet.
Yeah.
But we've got a name for it, and I think actually just today, put in the last order for components and things like that. And so the name is Augie Air, AIR, which ties back to AirPro. But we've been kind of clever about the logo. And so the logo is written as capital A, capital I. So as in AI, right, with a lowercase r. And we've got a slogan that goes along with it of ADAS intelligence redefined. And so AIR. And so it's also lighter and smaller and more compact. And it's got a bunch of new features associated with it that make it easier to use for the customer on the other end. The functionality is very similar. How you set it up and how you work with it. If you've been using Augie and you decide to move into an Augie Air, it will be pretty seamless. It'll just be more user friendly. So that's probably the biggest change from a product standpoint. We've got some other things that are in the works, but they're probably too early to talk about at this point. We're hoping to have things that we can start talking about at SEMA that I think will be exciting from a maybe the rest of our business standpoint with AirPro in general. So moving all of that in the right direction.
I'm glad you brought up SEMA because that dovetails nicely into my next question. I'm getting the SEMA PR train has left the station, and I'm getting a lot of news from SEMA right now, and the excitement's building, and we're ways off yet, but we know it's coming. It's the granddaddy of all the shows. I know you go to a lot of shows across the country, but talk to me about, is it too early to talk about SEMA and what your guys' plans are and your presence there and what technology you plan on unveiling and, just your general plans?
Yeah, so first and foremost, 100% will be at SEMA. We plan to have a presence similar to what we've had the last couple of years. SEMA is an interesting show for us. SEMA is a show that you have to be at. It doesn't necessarily, in our experience, it doesn't always lead to a giant number of leads. It's more about the networking. It's more about the business meetings that you can have while you're there. Not to say that we don't get leads, but we get leads at really small shows as well. It's more all the other things that you can do while you're there, talking with your competitors and having strategic conversations, talking with your vendors and suppliers, talking with everybody from big customers down to small customers and potential clients and things like that. There's just everybody's there, and so you can get a lot accomplished in that time frame. As far as what will be different in the booth, 100% will have Augie Air there, and that's what we'll be using for demonstrations and things like that. I expect to also have some new surprises on the AirPro side of our business. We've had the same AirPro device basically from the beginning, right? It's the same case with effectively the same technology in that case. I expect there to be some changes on that front by the time we get to SEMA. Whether or not they'll be ready for deployment or if we'll be at prototype stage and ready to show off where we're headed remains to be seen. I'm really tempted to try and throw that stake in the ground and make the technology team have to keep up with it, but I'm not going to. I'm not gonna spike the ball on them and set a deadline that I'm not sure we're ready to commit to just yet. But one way or the other, there'll be new things to see. It's just whether or not we have new things to sell yet remains unclear.
Josh, I know you guys are in contact with a lot of collision repairs customers. What are you hearing out there as far as their maturity / evolution in the ADAS calibration world? Doing this at their shop to complete a repair, talking to customers, the consumer about it. Obviously, we're more and more of these ADAS vehicles are coming out. Anything you're hearing from collision repairers as to where they stand right now with this technology?
I'd say we're hearing just about everything. And what I mean is I still hear from shops, and I think we've talked about this example in the past, right? I still hear from, the shops that are, head buried in the sand and just thinking that they don't need to do it because the light isn't on. I'm hearing that less, and I think that's a good sign. We talk to shops that are completely reliant upon us. We love those customers, and that's fantastic. We've got shops where they're reliant upon us to do everything remotely, and others that are reliant upon us to have an embedded tech in their facility, where we will place our staff there to do all of the work for them. Both of those models work really well for us, and it just kind of depends on the customer and what's the best fit. And then, of course, we've got customers that have, they're subletting the work out to, others around them, whether it's mobile or dealer or some other variation. And then finally, you've got customers that have taken it all on themselves, and they're doing it internally with their own calibration space or center or whatever. And we work well with all of those models. We're pretty adaptable to figure out the right way to fit. Obviously, we'd love for the customer to do all of the work with us, but ultimately, we want the customer to do all of the work. As long as the car is getting put back together and we can support where that customer needs us to, that's a customer we want to work with. And so we've got examples of all of the above.
Presented from the Aishin Broadcast Studio at Babcock's Media.
Yeah, and something you just said reminded me, you guys were one of the first, if not the first, to have that remote capability. And then now it seems like everybody has that. And I guess it makes sense from an evolutional standpoint. Evolutional, probably not the right word. I don't think that's a word, but you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
So tell me a little bit about that. You being the pioneer in remote diagnostics, and now it seems like everybody's offering it.
Yeah, remote it just makes sense that it's a component of the toolbox, if not, a leading tool in the toolbox. I think about some of the mobile companies that are out there that, I'm calling them today to say, I need you to come by and do a pre-scan or a post-scan. I don't know that it makes, a great deal of sense in my mind why I'd want to get in my van and drive across town to go do that. I suspect what tends to happen is that in those examples, they wait to see if that stacks up maybe with another service at that facility or at a nearby facility to kind of make the trip make sense. Now, I'm not in their business and I'm not trying to be critical of their business, but what I'm saying is an organization like AirPro can help you and help that customer to be more efficient. And so we have mobile providers that we work with for just that reason. It'd be easy to look at them and say, well, they're a competitor because they're also doing diagnostics or calibrations. But I think that's the wrong way to look at it. We look at them and say they're somebody we can partner with, and we can make each other better. So we'll handle the pre-scans and the post-scans, and the mid-scans, if you will. Those different types of services we'll take care of, and you go for the things where you actually need to be on site with the vehicle in order to do it, right? So whether it's calibrations or wiring repairs and things like that. So let's focus on our strengths and use the fuel in the tank where you need to.
Yeah. And I want to ask you, Josh. So we had I wrote my column recently about a law firm that has called out crash avoidance on their website as a litigation area, which was really scary to read. And clearly, they are aware of a lot of shops not having the training, knowledge, or tooling to do proper ADAS calibrations. And if they are doing them, they may be doing them improperly. So it was very scary, and I wrote this article, and it got a lot of attention from our readers, as it should. What is your take on that? I've heard everything from, ADAS liability, it's overstated. It's, the stats don't bear it out. No one's getting, their pantsuit off them for improper calibrations. And then I've heard the other side where, it's happening, it's out there. What is your take on it?
I'm probably going to talk out of both sides of my mouth on the topic because I can argue it both ways. Okay, so on one hand, let me open with, I'm not aware of any filed lawsuits to date on ADAS as the topic of the lawsuit. Okay, I'm not aware of any claims that have been made where the vehicle was calibrated incorrectly and subsequently it was in an accident or didn't perform correctly and there's some sort of litigation taking place. Now, do I think that there have been threatened issues or issues raised that were resolved without anything getting filed? I suspect that there has been. We're a pretty litigious society. I'd be surprised if there hasn't been some claims. Nothing's made it into the court and nothing's made it through from that standpoint, to my knowledge. And like everybody else, we pay attention. It'd be a headline for you guys if it happened, and I don't think you've had a headline yet. So first and foremost, there's that. So now why? Two things. One, the OEMs are very careful to describe it as an assistance system, not a safety system. We refer to it as a safety system as an industry, but the OEMs are pretty careful about how they describe it. It is an assistance system. Right? I've got a new truck. I love this new truck. It's a 2025. It has all of the features, right? It's got lane keep assist. It's got adaptive cruise control. The only thing it doesn't have is the hands-off level of autonomy. But everything short of that, lane keep assist, lane departure warning, blind spot, auto emergency braking, pedestrian alert, cross traffic alert, right? It's got all of these different features. And I didn't think I wanted them all. I friggin' love them. I'm using the heck out of them. The moment I get in the truck, I'm hitting the cruise control button as soon as I'm above 30 miles an hour. And I'm letting it do an awful lot of the driving. I'll let it slow down in traffic in stop and go traffic and speed back up to the, I love the features, but they are assistance features. I'm not relying on them to keep me out of an accident. I'm relying on them to make it a little more convenient to operate the truck and perhaps do so a little bit more efficiently, right? I suspect I can get a little bit better gas mileage if I'm letting the truck make the decisions about at what rate to re-accelerate back up to the set cruising, driving speed, as an example. So I say all of that to say the OEMs are careful, and that's not an accident, about what they call it and why they call it that. Then there's the issue of not currently having a good digital paper trail of who did what when. Okay, you can't go into the vehicle, generally speaking. I'm sure there's exceptions, there always are, but in general, you can't go into the vehicle and say it was last calibrated at this time with these values and this result. That doesn't exist. Either the system's on and working or it's not on and working. That's about all you can find out. And so, because you don't know that, when it was last done and by who and what result and what the values were, what the return values were, et cetera, you also don't really know if it was calibrated yesterday and it drove over a pothole or a curb or whatever today enough that it jostled something, right? Or maybe take it a step further. Let's just say that it was a light accident in a parking lot today that was enough to impact the front radar sensor, but it didn't leave a mark on the bumper. It didn't disturb the paint. Okay, maybe now that sensor is out of calibration. We don't know that. That's not readily attained information, and you can't find necessarily the paper trail for it. And so if you don't have that, what's the claim you're going to make? What's the proof you're going to find to support your claim, more importantly? Because we all know we can make a claim, but eventually you've got to be able to defend it and support it with evidence. And so I have a hard time seeing how that's going to play out either. Do I think we will see something at some point? I'm sure we will. I'm sure some claim is going to make it to the light of day, and it will get lots of attention. It'll be the next John Eagle type, scenario. And I will say this, as awful as it sounds, I think that will be good for the industry. I think something like that coming to light will help convince people that they need to do the right thing, that they need to conduct these repairs, and that the idea that, I disconnected the battery and I left the camera plugged in while I replaced the glass means I didn't need to recalibrate the camera, isn't an acceptable answer. I think a claim can get traction in that scenario. Okay? The OE clearly says what you need to do is this, then this, then this. What you did was leave the camera plugged in, you disconnected the battery, you did not attempt to calibrate it because you don't think it was necessary. And oh, by the way, you've also got posts all over social media saying you don't think it's necessary. Like, I think you're probably in a losing situation in that scenario. And so I think at some point, something like that is going to happen and someone's going to lose, and it'll probably be good for the industry as a result. It won't be great for that person. It won't be great for the owner of that vehicle that whatever happened to, right? But for the greater good, I think it'll be positive.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned your new truck and how you love all the ADAS features. And I have a car that I've owned for 2 years, and I like the features. And I think when these features first came out, people were a little annoyed, turn off my lane departure warning. But I think we just had a writer in Body Shop mention that it's been out there long enough now where consumers are relying on these features to help them drive, and they like them, and they're getting more knowledgeable about them, and how that they have to be addressed when they take it in for repair. So that's interesting. Yeah. I think people are getting acclimated to these features and starting to really rely on them to help them drive. That's interesting.
Yeah, you mentioned lane keep assist, lane departure warning, right? That's one that people tend to gripe about. It's not annoying if you use your turn signal. It's annoying if you try and change lanes or turn without using your turn signal. Well, guess what I'm doing more now? I'm using my turn signal more. I don't think that's an awful result.
Yeah, and the statistics I've seen, crashes are there are fewer crashes happening front and rear due to automatic emergency braking. Those stats are coming out, and it is having an effect. So interesting stuff. But Josh, I really appreciate your time today. It's been a great conversation. We covered AirPro, what's new with you guys, your private equity backing, your SEMA plans, and we talked a little bit of liability. I think we covered a lot, so I really appreciate your time.
Hey, I'm glad to be on, and I appreciate the invite.
No problem. I'm Jason Stahl. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching this episode of Under the Radar. For more episodes, visit bodyshopbusiness.com.